Hello, all you VC people. It's Matt, and I'm back with another album review. So, first off, I hope you all are having a good Memorial Day weekend. I hope everybody has Monday off. Have a safe time, have a fun time out there. And still doing Beatles solo album reviews in order of chronologically. Did the Paul albums and the George albums, and now I'm into the Ringo albums. So we come today to certainly Ringo's best known solo effort, his most successful critically and sales and chart wise, and it's of course the self titled Ringo album, which came out in America on November 2nd in 1973. A couple of days later in England, or a few days later, I think it came out on the 9th or so of November. Very successful album for Ringo. This got to number 2 in the United States. Elton John's Goodbye Yellow Brick Road album held the top spot, so otherwise this probably would have been a number 1 album for Mr. Starr there. I think it did get to number 1 in Canada, and it got to number 7 in England. So chock full of big time guest appearances here. The most prominent of which are John, Paul, and George. But you've also got Nicky Hopkins, Billy Preston, members of the band, and Mark Bolan, and just all sorts of people here. So Ringo had released 2 albums in 1970. One of them was Old Pop Standards, Sentimental Journey. The second one, Bukus of Blues, was a country album. So a little bit of a gap there between album releases. He made movies and otherwise kept himself occupied, though he did release 2 excellent singles, It Don't Come Easy and Back Off Boogaloo, in 71 and 72. Both really good. Saw quite a bit of success on the charts and sales wise. When he decided it was finally time to make his first proper pop and rock solo album, he called on uh, got a little with a little help from his friends, called on people to help him out with contributing songs and guest starring on the album and singing and playing and so forth, and it worked out really well. This is all 4 Beatles show up on this album. Unfortunately, not at the same time ever. Though you do have one track that has 3 of the former Beatles playing, so that's pretty much something there. What else about this album? Here's my copy, which is pretty well worn, but still, there's the cover, there's the back cover. Here is the gatefold, which is so-so. I never thought too much about the gatefold there. I do like the cover, though. It's sort of of course, Ringo with the star above his head, and then that little slightly disturbing angel guy thing, whatever that is. But maybe a little bit of the Sergeant Pepper concept, Ringo on stage and a cast of characters behind him. You can see you can find each of the other Beatles in there and the other people that play on this album, and then just some sort of odd characters. Who knows who they are, but it's a lot of fun to look through there and pick out the people. And of course, you've got Do It on Monday, which is Latin for let's wait till Monday to do it. Uh, Back, of course, I already showed that, but that shows who plays on which track and who wrote which track. You also get this book, which kind of like the gatefold of the album, but inside you get the lyrics and you get a drawing for each song. Looks like it's a pen and pencil or a charcoal drawing, but the picture sort of illustrates the song per se. And then you get the album proper, which is on the Apple label, but it's got Ringo in the middle of a star there. So let's just jump right into it. The first song, I'm the Greatest, was written by John for Ringo, and this is the one that actually has George, John, and Ringo playing on it. So there's your 3 Beatles. Uh, Kind of an autobiographical song of growing up and becoming famous, which could have worked for John or Ringo. John said that, this is Ringo could get away with singing this. I really couldn't, because it would sound too controversial or boastful, I guess. But with Ringo, he can get away with this, and he does. He does a really good job of it. He's in great voice throughout this entire album. Great voice for Ringo, granted, but still good voice. Uh, it's um, just a chugging, rolling along pace and beat to the song. Really good opening. Sounds very 1973, but that's not a bad thing. I give the opening song "I'm the Greatest" a 9. It's just a great way to start the album. And Ringo's actually obviously having a lot of fun when he starts screaming "I'm the greatest today, tomorrow, and ever," and he sounds like he's just having a ball. And everyone playing on the song also sounds like they're having fun. So the second song was written by Randy Newman. It's called "Have You Seen My Baby?" Again, very 70s sounding song in a good way. Got a nice piano. Mark Bolan plays guitar on this. It's a good, solid album, deep album cut, and a good second track. I'm going to give it an 8 on "Have You Seen My Baby?" Third song is "Photograph," which was the lead-off single, which came out before the album. I don't remember, a month or so before the album. Went to number 1 in the United States, so a big hit for Ringo, and went to number 8 in England. So Ringo, chart-wise, was actually doing as good or better than his former bandmates at this point in his career. So, of course, George had a number 1 in 73 too with "Gimme Love." But so "Photograph" is a very poignant, mournful ballad. Could be he's singing about, a lost love. That he broke up with his wife or girlfriend. Could be that he's singing about someone that's passed away, because it's all he's got of this person is a photograph and the memories of who this person was and what they were. And it could even be, I think, that singing to Beatle fans from the perspective of Beatle fans, that all the Beatle fans have, besides the records obviously, are photographs of the Beatles, and now the Beatles are gone, and so they just have the memories of the Beatles. And I don't know if that was taken into consideration in the song or not, but I kind of thought that might be a possibility. It's probably more about a lost love or a breakup with the wife or girlfriend, or possibly someone who's passed away. But it's written by George and Ringo. Again, a big hit. I love the song. Even I remember getting this in when it came out. I was in 4th grade. I got the 45 with the picture sleeve, which was the picture sleeves like that. And the only criticism I have of the song is it always sounded a little too slow. The pace, the tempo, that it kind of drags, like something happened with the tape when they were putting it on the record. The tape kind of dragged. I don't know if I'm alone in that or if anybody else has ever felt that way, but it's still a great song, and it's gets a 9 from me for "Photograph." The 4th song on side 1 is written by George as well. This is "Sunshine, Life for Me, Sail Away Raymond." It's a very sunny country rock concoction. Kind of, let's just get away from it all, and pretty upbeat in a way, maybe a little bit downbeat, but pretty upbeat for the most part. And members of the band play on it. Very fitting Ringo vocals that just suit the song perfectly. And so I give "Sunshine, Life for Me" a 9 as well. Number 5 song is "You're 16," which was the second single off the album, which also hit number 1. So 2 number 1s for Ringo. Imagine that happening nowadays, but back then things like that happened. So and I remember getting the 45 of that when I was in 4th grade too. So that was what always stuck out to me, was that my dad, who was not a rock and roll music fan at all, he grew up as the fan of big band and Sinatra and Bing Crosby and that sort of stuff, and he never cared for rock and roll much at all, but he thought this was a good song. So I just remember that from being a kid. Paul plays on this. He plays sort of they say he plays the kazoo, but apparently he plays something else, some other instrument that sounds like the kazoo. I don't know, but he doesn't sing on it. It's a kind of a rockabilly, country-ish and a little bit of an old pop standard type song. I always thought it was all right. I was not a song that I particularly like or don't like. I'm going to give it a 6. I know there's, nowadays with the way things are, I've heard people talk about how this is a controversial song because here's this guy, Ringo would have been about 32 or so at the time, singing about a 16-year-old girl. But this was an old song from the 60s by Johnny Burnett, which was a hit in 1960, I believe. I don't know how. I think I've heard the Burnett version. I can't remember for sure, but Burnett didn't write it. Someone else wrote it. But Burnett was probably 20, 21 when this song, the original, came out. Ringo's 32. This is probably a song that he remembered from 1960 because the Beatles, of course, were huge rock and roll fans, and he's just doing a cover version of an old song that he liked. I don't, in any way think that nowadays, I guess, if a 32-year-old guy came out with a song singing about a 16-year-old girl, we might all look at it as kind of, don't know about all this, but different time, different place, and I don't think Ringo was in any way contemplating, being a pedophile or anything ridiculous like that. I think it's just an old rock and roll song that he remembered from 1960 when he would have been 19 or 20 or whatever he would, or 20 or whatever, and just an old song he liked and wanted to do a cover version of it. So I never had any problem with it from that respect. And when I bought the song, when I got the album and the singles brand new back in when I was 10 years old or whatever, thoughts like that never even crossed my mind. I thought it was an okay song. It wasn't one of my favorites on the record, but I'm going to give it a 6 anyway, and we'll move on. Enough said about that. Side 2 opens with Oh My My, which was the third single off the album, got to number 5 in the United States, written by Vinnie Poncia and Ringo. Love the piano and the organ introduction to the song. You got Billy Preston, you got Martha Reeves singing backup, you got Mary Clayton singing backup, who of course you might remember sings on Gimme Shelter with the Rolling Stones, that great It's Just a Shot Away vocal part. And yeah, just nice drums, just a really good slab of soul sounding 1973 music with Ringo singing, doing pretty well on the vocals. I don't know what they say the head nurse did there. I'm not sure, but it's just really love this song. I'm going to give it a 10. Second song on side 2 is Step Lightly, which is a song written by Ringo, if I'm not mistaken. And yep, Mr. Richard Starkey wrote that one. Kind of a country ballad, a little bit filled with bits of majestic moments throughout the song, and you've got that nice little soft shoe vaudeville style music interlude in the middle of it, and it's really nice ballad. I like that, and I'm going to give that my good friend Joe, Mr. Mayo, just because it drives him nuts, he'll get this. I'm going to give that a 9.8654. That's for you, Joe. So on Step Lightly. Number 3 song on side 2 is written by Paul McCartney, Paul and Linda McCartney actually, and they both contribute vocals to it. Ringo sings lead vocals, they contribute backing vocals. Paul plays piano and synthesizer. It doesn't play bass. Klaus Vormann plays bass, which is kind of weird when you think that Paul would let someone else play bass on a song, but there you go. Yeah, it's just a breezy sing-along song that's a nice little slab of Paul McCartney upbeat pop music, and I really like it. I'm going to give it a 10. Ringo's in very good voice. Only criticism, the synthesizer bits are a little cheesy and a little dated, but they're not terribly so, and it's still good enough to get a 10 from me. Number 4 is Devil Woman, which is another Poncia and Ringo written tune. It's a nice kind of pounding rock and roll track, so maybe the most most rocking song on the album. It's slightly generic, but it's still a good song overall, and I'm going to give that a 7.8. That's for you too, Joe. And then we end the album with, make sure I didn't skip anything there. We end the album with You and Me, Babe, which was written by George Harrison and Mal Evans, which is great ending to the album. I'm giving that a 10 too. I love the line, may not be in your town, but you can, I'm here on the record going round and round, which is funny because Ringo didn't tour, and at the time in 1973, I remember thinking, it'd be cool if the former Beatles toured, and thinking like, well, George might tour, Paul might tour, John might tour, but you couldn't imagine Ringo doing a tour. As far as a solo tour, you could imagine him going out on the road with George or John or something. But, and now, of course, 50 years or 40 whatever years later, Ringo's toured probably more than any of them. Him and Paul might be neck and neck, but I mean, he tours constantly from 1989 to now. So that just kind of hits me funny, that line. And I love the end when he's doing the shout out. Okay, it's time to call it a night. It's time to go. And I want to thank John, Paul, and George, and I want to thank everybody that plays on the album. And then he's got that thank Richard Perry for producing this masterpiece, and that's just classic Ringo. And a great way to end the album. That gets a 10. So a lot of people, not a lot, but I've heard people say that they think this is the best of the solo Beatle albums. I wouldn't go that far, but it is a really good one, and I'm going to give it a 9 overall. And we'll see what happens with Ringo next. There's plenty of albums to go, and back with the next one whenever I feel like it. And again, have fun and good holiday, and take care.